crisis, the periphery crisis in the south and in the east, is not only a financial and fiscal crisis, but it's also perhaps even primarily, a productivity crisis in terms of diverging productivities. And since this is a German car, everybody else is flying out of the back door, basically. Nobody can keep up the German productivity engine. And just a note of caution, all the pictures you're going to see here are not photoshopped. So somebody actually really made that. And this is by a Chinese artist, Yi Wei. So, evolutionary perspective, what I mean by that is very simple, that the financial side of the economy and the real side of the economy are very connected, for the evolutionary process between that, and this is what we indeed going to see also in the European case. Again, not a Photoshop picture, so about the assumptions of the European integration, and this picture is also somewhat difficult to understand whether the lady is actually dying the guy down or is he helping the guy out of the tracks. And indeed, the European integration story is somewhat similar. I mean, if you look at the single market creation, the idea of single market was that it leads in a very sort of a Ricardian sense, it leads to a convergence of productivity. Everybody else gets as productive as the most productive member of the European Union. And basically, it was supposed to happen through exports. So this is what in 1989, 85, you have white paper by the European Commission says, well, what we want to have is everybody have more exports. And the way to get it, let's have a single market. So the point was that everybody should not finance their growth, not really by domestic demand, but really by foreign savings, by exports. So because everybody should be more export-oriented. And this actually allowed the European Commission later in 1992 in the Maastricht criteria to actually disconnect the private and the public balance sheet, saying that the public balance sheets are only important for the discipline, and the private balance sheets are not important in that sense because the financing of the growth comes from exports anyway. So the idea was basically that you discipline the state and you free the market, and everybody's better off. Basically, what the European integration was based on, the assumption is that everybody is a small open economy. Even if you have a large economy, you're still supposed to behave like a small open economy, as has been pointed out by a few people already, I guess, 10 years ago. So basically, European integration flew out of the assumption that this is basically everybody in more or less the same duck group, as Mario was showing. So as you have a more or less a symmetric integration and with a bit of flying keys thrown into it, so if you're not on the same level, convergence will happen anyway. And this is again from the European Commission white paper from 1985. So if you now look at some data, what then really happened? This is a drawing from Kafka, so it should give you a hint what's coming. So if you look at, and I did a calculation on German labor productivity because of the BMW from the picture in the beginning. And this is a very long-term view, and as you see, Scandinavia, which is Sweden and Finland, are actually converging after the European single market introduction. Then you see the pigs, who are Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, are actually diverging from the European single market introduction, and the Central European countries, which is Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and Czech Republics, are actually sort of converging, but only after or really only after the accession to the European Union as well. So in the long-term picture, there is actually no real convergence from the south, if you will, and the east is from a very, very low position, beginning to converge in late 1990s. Sorry. So if you look at what happened after the euro introduction, again you see this is financial account, and then the vertical axis you have nominal wages, just to show you the dynamics, and you see that basically the south and east and the north are on the opposite sides. So you have Germany basically having almost no wage growth for 10 years. Even nominal wage growth is very low. You have Scandinavia that has wage growth, but if you remember from the last picture, Scandinavia also had higher productivity than Germany, so they have basically no problem with that. On the opposite side, you have Central Europe. Its nominal wage costs growing through the roof very, very quickly in 2000s. And also the pigs having more and more money coming in and more wages growing nominally as well. So they're on the opposite side of the picture, if you will. And this I will not show. And this is looking at the current account. And you have, again, current account, and then on the vertical you have high technology balance, basically showing the importing and exporting of high technology goods and services. And you see the green dots and the red dots are again on the one side, which means the north and the east. Oh, sorry, the south and the east are on the one side of the coin, and on the other side of the coin you have again Germany and Scandinavia. Basically, they're again separated in the current account, and they're also separated on the high technology account, if you will. And this looks at knowledge is a royalty and license fees. So how much companies pay and receive for licensing intellectual property rights. But not only the intellectual property rights, value added per capita is not actually growing that much, but it has more and more licenses, license fees from royalty. So this, I guess, tells you that Eastern Europe is much more sort of integrated into the German and Northern European production networks because they get new production facilities, so they have to pay the fees for that. And this is what basically is happening. And you see the PIGS countries are basically having slowly more and more knowledge, but actually not getting more and more industrialized at the same time. Again, this is a long-term view. And this is basically, you have current account, and then on the vertical axis you have number of organizations with high learning capabilities. European Union does a very large-scale survey every 2 years, where thousands and thousands and thousands of people, employees, are asked about their working practices. And so you can actually check out what kind of working practices you really have. So if you have a problem on a shop floor, something goes wrong, and the questionnaire actually asks, who's going to solve the problem? Is it the management? Is it the workers? And so on. So you can have a organizational types. You can have like terroristic organizations where, for instance, workers cannot really solve anything, and the management has to do all of the problem solving. And on the other hand, of course, you can have these learning organizations where the shop floor can decide basically everything. So you have this very highly skilled workers, basically. And this vertical actually shows you basically the number of learning organizations in the economy. So that the higher you are, the more organizations you have where the learning is encouraged. So the workers have more skills, more competences, and more rights to do activities of production. And as you see again here, the current accounts of course separates them. And you see that here the Eastern Europe is actually even higher than the South of the EU. So that in the Southern European countries, the terroristic organization is still dominating. Basically you have terroristic mass production organizations. And so, if you look at the single market, 5 minutes, it's fine, emerged very quickly in financial services, and basically what we heard also before, that the euro area completed this process very quickly. In the product market, it seems to have emerged in a very sort of peculiar way. In the beginning, initially, it seems that the single market was very good for the large multinationals from the north, who reaped indeed the economies of scale. But it also sort of seemed to create lock-in effects in private sector capabilities in the south and in the north, basically. The south remained terroristic, if you will, and the north became more and more this learning type of organization, more and more innovative in a sense. And the east became then a sort of a northern extension, and in many ways also resembling the south in other ways. And basically what you have in 2000, the euro introduction, you have a low interest rate, an inflow of easy money, if you will, which basically sort of reinforces all of these mechanisms. So the single market basically became rather effective at killing the geese in the south and also in the east, and creating sort of enclave economies, especially in the east, which are the export production networks that are very, very tightly integrated with German and Nordic networks. So here you have policy responses. A policy response in 2000 is the knowledge-based economy and so on and so forth. As Eric Reinhardt has said, this is basically a Schumpeterian icing on the neoliberal cake. EU became more and more, in terms of policy, looking towards competition and enlarging the single market, rather than dealing with the imbalances in terms of productivity. And this is basically to have the same figure, but now with policy assumptions. And if you look at the EU policy assumption is that you should move from being a sort of a low economy, so you should basically jump into the high technology, and the Schumpeterian and the historical successes that Eric Reinhardt has shown so many times. Basically, it's that you move slowly or upgrade yourself, and you start exporting more, and then you can move to the high technology sector, if you will. So the EU seems to be moving in the opposite direction. And the challenge remaining, as we have heard before, today basically you have sort of the short-term problems which are the fiscal and financial crisis, which is really about the ECB's role, the European Central Bank can constitutionally do much more than it does now, and many people, especially in Germany, seem to think that it cannot, although the ECB is acting on the secondary market anyway. So the medium-run problem is basically the financing of growth, whether this can be, I mean, not everybody can be exporting within the European Union, so you have to have the domestic demand. The problem is many of the European countries have scaled back the welfare state during the last 20 years, and the fiscal retrenchment in the last few years has done that with more. And even if you would have in the EU a sort of a wage growth strategy, you're still competing with China and everybody else who has low wages. And the long-term challenge for EU is really to rediscover or reinvent industrial policy. And this is sort of difficult for the EU because EU has really internalized WTO, World Trade Organization. EU countries and many European Commission officials have really